An extremely dangerous storm system is about to impact the United States, bringing the potential for a derecho, which means widespread damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes will all be a possibility. So in today's forecast, we are going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days. And we'll begin with what's happening across the country today. And we are coming off of a pretty big severe weather event that took place in the Midwest and the Northern Plains yesterday. We end up having one huge tornado just outside of Watertown, South Dakota. That was covered on yesterday's live stream, and the remnants of those storms are still moving through the Midwest this morning. Now, the good news is that most of these storms are weakening, but we did end up seeing damaging winds extend all the way into very far southern Iowa and even western Illinois. Now, back over in the Northern Plains and through the Midwest, we are expecting another big day of severe weather where a potential derecho is going to happen, which we'll talk more about here in just a moment. I also want to point out across the Southern Plains and the Southeast, things are quiet for right now, and the tropics are also quiet in the Atlantic Ocean, and it'll probably stay like that for the next 5 to 7 days. And this is video from yesterday's tornado near Watertown, South Dakota. Luckily, there were no injuries or fatalities reported from this, but this was one of the most violent motion tornadoes that we've seen all year long, and we could even see something like this again today back over in South Dakota or Minnesota with today's environment. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next few days, beginning with today, which is Monday, and we have a moderate risk of severe weather in place. That is a level 4 out of 5 from the Storm Prediction Center, which does include eastern South Dakota and western Minnesota. Enhanced risk also encompasses a little bit of North Dakota, South Dakota, just to the west of the Twin Cities, and also northwestern Iowa, and then a slight risk all the way from Montana back into western Wisconsin, where all hazards of severe weather will be on the table today. We are talking about the potential for a significant windbag, meaning we could see a really severe mesoscale convective system, meaning a very intense line of thunderstorms, or more than likely than not, seeing a derecho today across the Northern Plains and back into the Midwest, which means widespread damaging winds anywhere from 60 to 110 miles per hour is going to be a possibility this afternoon and evening, which means that we are shaping up to see a very dangerous day of severe weather across these areas. On top of that, large hail is a possibility. This is by no means, though, the main concern. And then a few tornadoes are also going to be a possibility. This tornado threat should ramp up between 2 p.m. all the way through about 9 to 10 p.m. tonight. So make sure that you're staying weather aware, have multiple ways to receive warnings, and we'll be live later today covering this derecho that'll likely end up occurring here across the Northern Plains and the Midwest. Make sure you click the bell icon as well so you're notified when we do go live covering this significant severe weather event. And then on Tuesday, the threat of severe weather will shrink across the Central Plains and back into the Midwest, where we have a large marginal threat of severe weather, or isolated damaging winds and hail will really be the primary concerns. I wouldn't rule out an isolated tornado risk, but as of right now, the Storm Prediction Center has been hesitant on adding a tornado area, mainly because of the fact we don't exactly know where storms are going to set up on Tuesday. That has a lot to do with what happens today across the Northern Plains and the Midwest. And as we go into Wednesday, the threat of severe weather will continue in the Midwest and the Northeast, with 2 marginal threats of severe weather in place. Back over in the Midwest, this could be a little bit more interesting. We'll have a remnant mesoscale convective vortex, which could lead to a localized tornado threat, but overall, mainly should be damaging winds across Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois. But if anything changes, we'll definitely let you know. It's going to depend a lot on what happens really over the next 48 hours. So stay tuned for that. Back over in the Northeast, just marginal wind and hail are a possibility. Now let's talk more about the timing of severe weather for today. I'm going to show you 2 different scenarios that could evolve with today's significant wind event. The first of which would probably be the most significant one. So by 10 to 11 in the morning, we'll likely have a little cluster of storms that'll be ongoing back over in eastern Montana and western North Dakota. By around lunchtime is when this thing really starts to intensify and gets much more intense back over in southern North Dakota and northern South Dakota. This will be producing significant damaging winds as early as 10 to 11 in the morning. By around 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, this really intensifies across central South Dakota with widespread damaging winds and a likely derecho ongoing by this point, assuming that this model is correct, by the way. Again, there is another scenario that could also evolve. By 5 to 6 o'clock, we got a very intense line of thunderstorms going right through that moderate risk of severe weather, approaching areas like Gary, South Dakota, Watertown, Clear Lake, and also moving into far western Minnesota near Montevideo. By around 7 to 8 o'clock, notice how this line really is intense as it moves right into the Twin Cities area. It's actually bowing out on this particular model run, which would actually bring a more significant potential for not just damaging winds, but even a few tornadoes embedded in this line of thunderstorms would be a possibility back over near the Twin Cities tonight. So we need to really keep a close eye on southern Minnesota tonight. I know the tornado risk isn't super elevated in the Twin Cities, but if this line of thunderstorms thunderstorms actually ends up being something like this, we'll probably have some pretty significant severe weather even around Minneapolis. By 10 to 11 o'clock, this will eventually fall apart as it moves into Iowa and Wisconsin, becoming more outflow dominant, and the tornado threat would be basically zero, and the damaging wind threat would decrease rapidly. Now, there is another scenario that could evolve in the northern plains in the Midwest today. It's going to depend a lot on what happens this morning, but the HRRR model is indicating more isolated to scattered convection across both Montana and North Dakota, which means our derecho would actually be delayed towards very late in the day. So what this basically means is that our storms that could actually end up being a very large line of thunderstorms may not fire until 6 to 7 o'clock back over in eastern South Dakota and western Minnesota. So again, depending on the morning convection will really determine what actually happens today and how the story essentially goes. If we have earlier convection that is linear, we'll likely see a derecho start as early as 10 to 11 o'clock this morning. However, if the HRRR model is right, we might not see this actually happen until 5, 6, 7 o'clock, which also could delay there even being a derecho at all. We might just see a really significant mesoscale convective system. So by around 7 to 8 o'clock, the HRRR has basically the same scenario where an intense line of thunderstorms will move across Minnesota with significant damaging winds, some large hail, and tornadoes being embedded in this line of thunderstorms. And by 10 to 11 o'clock, it has a slightly more intense line of storms moving into western Wisconsin, where damaging winds would continue, but this would eventually fall apart by the time it gets towards Wausau, Milwaukee, or even northern Illinois, just gusty winds being the biggest concern. Isolated damaging winds, though, would still continue to be a threat out of that. Also, there is an elevated tornado threat for today. This is mainly going to be back over in our little area here in eastern South Dakota and western Minnesota. It is basically the same area where we had a tornado risk yesterday, so I do think a few tornadoes are going to be in play, and if we get any discrete supercells in this environment later today, there could even be the potential for a strong tornado, so something we need to keep an eye on. This tornado threat would stay elevated all the way through the Minneapolis area and also into far northern Iowa through about 10 to 11 o'clock tonight before that eventually diminishes after midnight. Now, let's just say that first scenario does pan out and we have a full-blown line of thunderstorms as early as 10 to 11 this morning. We could be talking about a significant wind threat that begins all the way back over in western North Dakota with damaging winds as high as 80 miles per hour. But notice all these wind gusts here, all the way from North Dakota back into very far southern South Dakota. It's essentially a widespread swath of 60 to 100 mile per hour winds by 4 to 5 o'clock this afternoon. This would really speed up as well as it moves towards Minnesota, and it will likely be moving at 60 miles per hour to the east, meaning this line of storms can be moving basically almost as fast as a highway car here back over in South Dakota and Minnesota. And these significant damaging winds would continue all the way through the Twin Cities by around 8 to 9 o'clock tonight. So definitely make sure you're protecting any loose line items. If you have any pets outside, if you know any people that might be outside today, make sure that you're bringing them in and make sure that they're staying weather aware. We will be live again later today covering this event, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified when we do go live. And we are going to be here every step of the way through this severe weather event when we are live, whenever the weather really gets intense across the northern plains and the Midwest. I also want to point out that there is another risk of severe weather on Tuesday. It's still uncertain what exactly is going to happen on Tuesday. It really rides on what happens today across the northern plains and the Midwest, but I do expect at least some scattered to numerous storms across the central plains, including Iowa, back through Nebraska. I also think the Midwest may have some severe weather as well, maybe back over near the Chicago area or even near Milwaukee. Damaging winds, large hail being the greatest concern tomorrow, but there is a low chance of an isolated tornado or two. But again, whatever happens tomorrow is going to really depend on what happens today. So too early to tell exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. I'll tell you what, though, we'll have a video tomorrow talking more about what's going to happen on both Tuesday and Wednesday. So stay tuned and we'll have an update for you then. Now, as we go beyond Tuesday and Wednesday, we are expecting an active weather pattern to probably continue through Wednesday and Thursday with just some scattered showers and storms from the central and northern plains back into the Ohio Valley and the Northeast. But I generally think by Friday and Saturday, high pressure will be dominating across the Midwest to the Great Lakes and back through the Northeast. I do think severe weather is going to become a lot less frequent as we go into the first few days of August. The next return of severe weather would probably be sometime around August 4th or 5th across the northern plains and the Midwest. As of now, don't see anything significant happening, but that could always change. And if anything does change, we'll let you know. And then beyond that, high pressure continues to stay in place for the most part across the Midwest and the northern plains. So generally speaking, severe weather is becoming less frequent, but we are definitely not out of the neck of the woods for more severe weather this July and August. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We'll likely again be live later today, so make sure you click the bell icon so you're notified with the latest updates, and we will have another video tomorrow. So stay tuned. We'll see you guys all again in the next video or live stream.